Hey guys, welcome back to 50 Years in Polygamy. I'm going to start off by saying, number one, like the video. Number two, forgive me for any allergy related things. I've had a sneezing fit, but I want to stay on track with my schedule. I'm a little congested, so you may hear some things here and there, but I got my tissue and I got my hand sanitizer, and more importantly, I have the book. This is chapter 13, Featherweight and Cougar Speed. It's years 1965 to 1967. And the patriarchal blessing Dad conferred upon me when I was 12. He said I was born into a noble lineage and our ancestral blood was pure and unblemished as far back as Jesus. Well, aren't you special? I'm sure that this was said to a lot of people, but we're going to go with it. There was not one drop of Cain's blood to blight our eternal progress. Apparently, I wasn't the only Alred kid who received the same message from God. In meetings in the neighborhood all around me, I heard claims of superiority. We carried royal Alred blood. This encouraged an attitude of supremacy, with many considering themselves God's chosen. We were told we were his handful of righteous people who above all others were entitled to his love and blessings. So it's okay for you to feel like you're chosen, but it's not okay for you to look in the mirror and see that you're beautiful. Okay. Because we were such beautiful souls in the pre-existence, we had the opportunity to be born under the covenant of plural marriage. If women continued to prove themselves, they would be exhausted, no matter how impoverished we were or how miserable we were, because our fathers and our husbands' time was spread between their ever-expanding families. We hoped we could go to heaven for being perfect women. So they exhaust themselves, they get to go to heaven. Got it. We could be God's righteous ones who be saved when he poured his wrath upon the face of the earth and destroyed the wicked. Of all the religious principles I was taught as a child, the one that was probably one of the most difficult to fathom was that one. Why would God save only a handful of his children when his whole world was full of them? I struggle with the piece of people not being saved too. Two of my cousins were totally infatuated with each other. Sorry, with these people, you never know. They appeared to be joined at the hip, but like the rest of us, both had been educated about the consequences of inbreeding. Okay, my facial expression was warranted. If God's kingdom was to be built, it required new blood, converts, and opportunities for those who should find the truth. To risk the well-being of our future generations by marrying relatives simply wasn't an option for the Allred group. There are plenty virtuous and honorable people out there, Dad preached. God will simply inspire and guide the right ones to the right place. Consequently, back then, the majority of our families wholeheartedly disagreed with the justifications Colorado City, the Kingstons, the Independents, and other polygamous groups used to justify intermarriages. I don't like that either. I feel like, okay, if you want to be polygamous, but when you start marrying your siblings and your half siblings and your cousins and stuff, that's a bit much for me. Often siblings as close as half brothers, oh my goodness, and half sisters were married, creating severe birth defects in way too many cases. I began to think I had a split personality. With all the controversy going on in my head and heart, I felt as if there were two souls inside of me, fighting with each other for survival. One of them felt sorry for my beautiful 16-year-old cousin who decided to leave the group. Folks around me said she'd probably go to hell when she died. At the very least, she would only make it to the celestial kingdom, the lowest glory of heaven. After all, she was one of those valiant spirits who'd been born and raised under the covenant, but chose not to participate in the fullness of the gospel. The other girl inside of me was terribly envious of my cousin. She had enough courage and determination to leave the group to find happiness outside of polygamy. The feminine soul inside of me wanted to be brave like my cousin, but knew I'd break my parents' hearts if I ran away. She's always putting everybody else before herself. Living a few joyous years on earth versus eternity without my family wasn't acceptable to me, or at least for the religious part of me. Excuse me. I just kept on plunging along, hoping and wishing I would someday make the grade and God would forgive me for all my sins. My brother Rick tried to be friendly toward me on rare occasions when we saw each other. I believe that's the one who SA'd her. He wanted me to act like nothing had ever happened. I thought it was because he felt so terribly about wicked things he's done to me. It's so funny how, not funny, ironic how the very people who abuse you are the same people who, number one, try to act like nothing happened. Two, try to make it seem like they did nothing wrong. Three, you end up forgiving them or feeling badly for them when they don't even feel that way about you. I could go on and on about that. Let me get back to the book. Oddly enough, something inside of my heart made me feel sorry for him. See? Maybe I surmise it was because when he died, he'd be spending his time in purgatory. During a summer race with my brothers James, Rick's comments changed my life. I was already angry for not pushing myself harder to become better, stronger. Excuse me. Sorry, y'all. I warned you. Oh! I knew. But now my throat is itching. Great. We're going to keep it going, though. Uh-oh. Where was I at? Stronger and faster. I don't remember where I was. I'll start from this part. During a summer race with my brother James, Rick's comments changed my life. I was already angry for not pushing myself harder to become better, stronger, and faster when James won our race up the street and back to our front porch. Rick happened to be standing there. Sophia, you could run a whole lot faster if you weren't so fat. What? I would have decked him in the face. After what you did to me, you're going to talk about my weight and how I could run faster if I wasn't so fat? Okay. None of my dad's ongoing, well-intended harassment about my mom's weight and our bad habits had changed my eating behaviors. Okay, so your dad does this too, which is probably another reason why he feels like it's okay for him to do it. Nor had the constant harassment from my cousins and the bullies. Their comments had only intensified my feelings of inferiority and my addictive behaviors. But that day, Rick's cruel words had a significant impact on me. They inspired an inner challenge. I would do anything to be able to run faster. Keep it healthy, please. After 12 years and 6 months of age, I carried 140 pounds on my medium-boned, 5'6" tall frame. I went beyond, what I would give to see 140 pounds. I haven't seen 140 pounds since I was pregnant. Well, right before I got pregnant, let me be. Sorry, I just thought about it. I went beyond all the starvation diets I ever heard about. Girl, that's what I didn't want you to do. I didn't eat or drink anything but water for the first week. One day while I was guzzling water from the drinking fountain at school, I blacked out for a few seconds. A male student nearby caught me before I hit the floor. He waited until I got my equilibrium back. After the first week, I added a variety of fruit juices from our canned goods, and by the third week, I added a few more solids to my diet. It felt so good not to eat. Oh, how I wanted to maintain that feeling and ending my compulsive overeating. I desperately wanted to hold fast to my anorexic regimen for the rest of my life. That's so sad. 4 weeks later, at 120 pounds, I delighted in my featherweight body and seemed to soar at the speed of a cougar. So not only is she going through all those things that she's been through at 12, she's now anorexic. This is why I say sometimes people say words don't, oh, sticks and stones may break my bones. That is, but words may never hurt. That is some crap, because words do hurt. And there are things that I know I can remember, and I'm sure you all can too, that have been said to you in a negative manner that you remember more than some other things that may have happened in life. Back to the book. The trip to Trick Creek, also known as Colorado City, with Dad during Mom and I was long and tedious as usual. As with every trip we'd ever taken down there, she begged me to conform to the weird dress standards I detested. To some degree, I become an assertive, rebellious teen, according to my mother, wearing medium length, she'd call it short, skirts and sticking up for myself a little more. My newfound strength, in her eyes character flaw, made me more difficult for her to pressure me into compliance. It won't hurt you to wear a long dress. I don't want you to offend anyone, she would say. Again, in the most logical way I could possibly divine, I tried to sway Mom's rationale by using the good old guilt analogy method. Mom, if I dress like they do just to appease them, isn't that being hypocritical? And didn't you say being deceitful is wrong? Way to throw it back at her, Sophia. I guess you're right, Mom smirked, realizing I gotten the best of her. Okay then, at least make sure you wear a modest dress. When we arrived at Grandpa's house, Mom's half-sister Maggie, who was 4 years older than me, and her new baby were there. Her sister was 4 years older. That means this girl was 16 and she already had a baby. Okay. Maggie and I had a lot of catching up to do. She informed me her husband had written her a Dear Jane letter and confessed to committing adultery while he was in the army. He wouldn't be coming back to Maggie. So she's 16, pregnant and alone. Oh, I'm sorry, had a baby and alone. She felt sad, but said it could have been worse if they'd had time to fall in love before their assigned marriage and his induction. So this wasn't even anything that she wanted. She was assigned this man. Somewhere along the line, Maggie informed me their community changed its name from the Short Creek to Colorado City. I also found out her leaders didn't believe they should adulterate their royal blood with new converts. For quite some time, intermarrying was the norm. Rather than send missionaries into a field to preach the fullness of the gospel to the Gentiles, which they had originally believed was God's will, their young men were asked to quit school and dedicate 2 years of life to a work mission. They were to donate their time without pay to help build the kingdom of God. The way they get over on these people. Many of the young men were told completing their mission would earn them a bride or two. This free labor helped pay for homes, fences, gardens, roads, a park, a school, a church, and supporting their prophet, Uncle Leroy Johnson. The townsfolk were delighted their new Colorado City High School was under construction by the young men serving their work missions. The construction was also funded with government money, granting an entire polygamous facility to serve humongous polygamous families who all followed the dictates of their prophet. Maggie and I both knew the rules from day one. It was unacceptable for boys and girls to talk or look to each other longer than necessary, lest they be tempted to fall in lust or love. However, on a beautiful summer day, our rebellious minds and young libidos got the best of us, and we decided to pay a visit to the school construction site. In the school bathroom, Maggie changed from her ankle long sleeve dress into a pair of tight jeans and a form-fitting blouse. Who knows where she found them? Zap! In a flash, she was a seductive-looking teenage beauty. Though I had no cleavage to show off, I undid the first and the second buttons of my blouse, the ones Mom always fastened back up when I supposedly forgot to, so my tantalizing collarbone would be seen. I rolled the waistband of my brown and black plaid skirt a few times so it would reveal my long bare legs from 3 inches above my knees. Oh, you being scandalous, girl. Lastly, I folded my long sleeves up to my elbows and tucked my beige Lady Manhattan blouse to hide a rolled up waistband. I think I think all of us may have, altered some of our clothing at times. I didn't go as drastic as she did, but I did do the thing where you roll up the waist to make it shorter. I did do that, but also had on skirts that had me looking like I was a nun. There, oh, yeah, there in the jurisdiction of dress codes and philosophies, Maggie and I must have appeared like Lady Godiva without her horse. Our flirtatious smiles and our mannerisms caused the eyes of those wicked young men who dared to look at us to bug right out of their heads. Those who were detected to avoiding even the appearance of evil turned away so their souls wouldn't burn in hell. A few brave, evil guys drew near, 6 or 7 of them teenage boys. Maggie and I wanted to completely ditch the rules. We joked about being able to spend hours on end in unchaperoned conversations. Fat chance that would ever happen. The young men were quickly called back to work by a brother who told us to beat it. Now, before we got back to the house, some good Samaritan had already informed Grandpa of our vile sins. Oh, Lord. The same Grandpa who hit them in the back, her and her brother, that time. Let's see. You nasty little trollops. I'm sorry. As he shouted as soon as we walked in the front door, you both have committed a cardinal sin today. You're not responsible for your own evil behaviors, but for the lustful state that you must have put on those young men. Oh, goodness. Because it's always the girl's fault. The guys couldn't do like what some of the other ones did and not pay attention, huh? The 7 guys that came up, why aren't they wrong? Oh, it's all on the girls, right? Right. I'm sure they were unduly tempted by your nasty little get-ups. You two ought to be ashamed of yourselves. Now get your nasty little arses up them stairs right now. I don't want to see your little horrible little sinners for the rest of the day. You horrible sinners, you. Sorry. Okay. Maggie and I didn't mind missing supper. It gave us time to review our exciting wild day on the town while her sisters ate and had to do the dishes. I think we both felt a little guilty. Would we be held accountable for messing with the boys' libidos, we wondered, until her 2 impressionable sisters, both close to my age, came along. Maggie and I entered ourselves into retrospection. What if did you see his eyes? We could have. The 2 of us laughed until our guts hurt and our eyes watered. Maggie's baby, her 2 sisters, and I sprawled across their double bed and continued our merriment, mixed with the usual girl talk late into the evening. Soon, all 3 of these attractive and charming aunts from Colorado City would be assigned to their covenant mates. Each one said she explicitly trusted their prophet's decision no matter what. They'd been taught since birth God would reveal to Uncle Leroy when and whom all eligible girls and boys should marry. It was never their own choice. It was a revelation from this man who picked and chose who should be with who. And as a result, because it's what's been ingrained in them all this time, they had to adhere to it. Terrible. Terrible. In this, my young aunts confirmed parts of their story Mom had told me not long before about their dear friend Alice. They too would most likely not know who their husbands would be until their wedding day. At first, they might despise or be repulsed by their husbands. It would be okay, though, my aunt assured me. After some time, they learned to love the head of their household. But more importantly, they told me if they were sweet, obedient wives, their husbands might learn to love them as well. This is some utter BS. It is, because you don't care that they don't love one another. You just care and putting whoever you want to put together. Of course, I was concerned about marrying the right guy. But after hours and hours of talking to my teenage aunts, I told them I'd still rather choose my own husband, even if I married the wrong man, rather than have to marry an old man like your sister Dorothy did or a total stranger. The girls were heartbroken for me. If only I would stay there and be part of their group like my sister Lucinda had done nearly 15 years earlier. This way, they coax, our prophet can make sure your future spouse is the man God wants you to marry. Even with our differences, the four of us felt a deep bond. We looked into each other's eyes in dismay. Do you think we have the same God? I asked my aunts. How do you feel about loving God who promises to damn everyone who doesn't follow the only prophet on this earth? That could be you or me. Is your prophet or my prophet the right one? Sadly enough, all four of us girls were sure we knew the right answer. Sacrament meeting had already started. I rushed from our back door across the patio near the door to the garage where we held our meetings. I heard a voice coming from behind our fence. Sophia, Sophia. Hey, Sophia, are you getting married today? Instantly, my stomach twisted into a huge knot. What are you doing here? I grumbled at Pete, the boy who'd been my worst adversary and most aggressive tormentor for years. I came to see ya, to see if I can screw you before you get married off to some old man, Pete said. What? Get out of here now, or I'll get one of my brothers to make you leave, I hollered back. Bet your brothers do you, don't they? Don't they? Pete taunted. I heard all of the men trade all their wives. They get together and mix up all the house keys, and then they go screw the women who live at that house. Oh, come on, Sophia. Let me do you before the old men get to you. Please, please. I was mortified and hurt. If I could have climbed over our fence in my Sunday dress, I'd have tried to beat the living daylights out of Pete. No one had ever talked to me like that before, let alone made such crude remarks about the good men and women in our group. You're pathetic and sick. Get away from here now, I yelled. The ignorant jerk kept calling out obscenities even as I escaped into the safety of our sacrament meeting. If I had told my brothers about his comments, they'd have beaten the tar out of him. It would have been all right with me, but the pestering at school would have become more unbearable than it already was. Telling wasn't an option either. I met Dick during youth conference at Pinsdale Ranch. Amy and I were surprised and nervous when we found out we had to stay at his family's house. Somehow Aunt Eleanor had made the sleeping arrangements for us girls. Amy and I naively flirted back and forth with Dick and his brother off and on during the weekend. Later in the summer, Dick said he was coming down to Salt Lake City and wanted to take me out. I found out later our date also had been prearranged. Since his mom and Aunt Eleanor were good friends, my going out a few months before I turned 13 made it okay to break the dating at 16 rule. Eleanor can't be trusted, but it's okay to trust Eleanor when it comes to dating. This is crazy. It was only the second time I had been to a drive-in movie theater. Dick sat too close to me and wouldn't keep his hands off of me. When he tried to kiss my neck, I pulled away and told him to stop. He just slid closer. Come on, Sophia, let's have some fun, he said. I was sickened and repulsed by how he was acting. I wanted to beat him up, but he was practically a nephew to Eleanor, so I had to be polite. Oh, no, you didn't. Please stop. Don't stop it, I persisted, but every attempt I made to resist his advances only seemed to entice him more. When Dick was nearly on top of me, I went emotionally and physically numb. Without one single turned on feeling and completely devoid of fear, I seemed to disappear and gave in to his lack of concern for me. It wasn't until he was so crazed he was ready to rip my clothes off before I came to my senses and screamed, "Stop it! Take me home now." There's no way to describe the emotions I felt on the long drive home, but after that night, I discovered a new and yet simple sense of courage inside of me. I felt like I won a disgraceful contest I hadn't signed up for. I was so grateful for those powerful feelings, but I was mortified about my inability to be stronger in the first place. Girl, you said stop. And your voice was heard because you said stop it now, and he finally stopped, which in the past this would have ended differently. So give yourself credit. Dick didn't speak all the way home, but he obviously thought I'd be speaking to my parents about him, so he beat me to the draw. When Aunt Eleanor called me into her bedroom a few days later, she scolded and lectured me on the evils of my smutty, aggressive behaviors. She explained how dirty, nasty, and evil sex was outside of marriage. She told me I should be ashamed of myself. I hope you know how blessed you were. Thank the good Lord you were with an honorable young man who wouldn't take advantage of your disgraceful conduct. So this jerk attacked her and made it seem like it was her who did it. Of course, when I attempted to explain what really happened with Dick, Aunt Eleanor didn't believe me. Things hadn't changed over the years where I was concerned. I still had no validity in my father's family. Whatever Aunt Eleanor said was the way it was. I knew I have to work very hard to prove myself. That's some crap. That is some crap. Sometimes you think you've been through some things and then you read someone else's story and it makes you feel differently. I was going to stop, but I'm going to go ahead and just finish out chapter 14. For those of you who don't like when I read long, just pause it here, go away, and come back. Chapter 14, Independence and My First Love, 1965 to 1967. Many of my teenage summer days and nights were glorious, and I'd never been so comfortable in my skin, and my slim body seemed to soar. Whenever I danced, ran, hiked, swam, or sailed down the steep sand dune hills, I was in heaven. I wonder if she's still starving herself, or if she stopped at this point. Boys were everywhere, and I cherished every minute of their attention and admiration. By my early teens, hundreds of families had converted to our polygamous group. Our fairly new garage in Murray was nearly overflowing with new and old members who wanted to attend Relief Society, priesthood, sacrament meetings, and Sunday school there. Amy and I started at two scantily dressed, Amy and I stared at two scantily dressed girls whose parents were new converts. As they walked up our driveway, I leaned into Amy and murmured, "Look at those wicked girls. They'll probably go to hell for dressing like that." "I know," she replied. "We won't ever dress like that." "Yeah, or wear so much makeup," I said, while deep inside I feared these girls would be our rivals. Yeah, isn't that what we do? My 20-pound weight loss seemed to give me value. I suddenly became worthy of love, attention, and a special kind of treatment I'd never known. Aunt Eleanor's oldest son, Charles, wanted to take me to one of the roller skating parties, and he and some of my older siblings went on a regular basis. "I want to show off my beautiful little sister," he told me. "Why?" "Invite Amy and Valerie to go with us if you want to." At the party, the three of us pulled our rented roller skates over our heels, laced them up, and then tied them tightly around our ankles as Charles directed us. So crazy how 20 pounds made a difference on how she was treated by her siblings. Terrible. Then we tried to skate across the floor. Finally, we plopped ourselves down on a side bench and watched everyone else glide around the room like pros. Excuse me. The rink was full of young independent polygamists, each one skating around the center poles in the same direction, moving to the music of the 50s and 60s. A few minutes later, we found ourselves gawking at an attractive young man who glided around the rink with a familiar looking, pretty, petite blonde. They twirled in circles, skating backwards, in between and around everyone else like they had been skating for years. Soon, the odor of S&M skating rink announced everyone should clear the floor because it was Guy's choice to ask the girl to skate. When the handsome guy we'd been staring at skated towards us, I bent down pretending I was checking my skates. "Do you want to skate?" I heard him ask Amy or Valerie. I was too smitten or shy to look up. I waited for one of my friends to stand up and skate away. They didn't budge. I could still see his feet right in front of me. "Don't you want to skate with me?" he asked again. Simultaneously, Amy and Valerie elbowed my side. "Sophia, he's talking to you." I looked up. "Me?" "Yeah, do you want to skate?" "I don't know how to skate. I've never done it before," I answered. "That's okay. I'll teach you." He grabbed both of my hands and pulled me onto the floor. Nervous, I lost my balance umpteen times and tried to overcome the interference of my inferiority complex. Royce asked me a million questions as we tried to skate. We laughed together when I fell and when I succeeded. He gave me hugs for support and confidence and reassured me I was making great progress. Before the evening was over, I was on cloud nine. In one evening, I had become an amateur skater, skating pretty good forward and not so bad backward. As we were about to leave, Royce asked me if I'd go on a date with him in the near future. "I'm not supposed to date yet," I told him. "Yet? What do you mean yet? How old do you have to be before you can date?" "Dad wants me to wait until I'm 16. 16? How old are you?" I knew if I told Roy I'd be 13 in a few months, it would end his interest in me. I wanted to lie through my teeth and be okay with it, but then the truth had become more and more important to me. "I'll be 13 in November," I confessed. "No way. You're kidding me. You're older than that." "I'm not kidding you. I'm only 12. "You're 17, Roy said. "You just don't want—" I wish I was 17. "Listen, Sophia, if you don't want to go out with me, just say so." "I do want to. I love to go out with you, but I can't." The next morning, after Amy, Val, and I woke up from our sleepover, Charles found me and called me aside. "You know what, Sophia? Roy said he thinks you are wonderful and beautiful, but he killed over when I told him you were only 12. He was sure you were at least 16 or 17. He wants to go out with you. Just take things slow and easy and be careful, sis, okay?" I was totally confused by Charles' remarks. Royce was going to be 18 in January. I was sure he wouldn't wait 3 years to go out with me. The same afternoon, Amy, Valerie, and I found out Royce was in Dad's yard for the first time that I knew of. He was there to pick up something from Charles. He later told us, "We primped as fast as we could and made our own excuse to go outside where we might just bump into Royce. Despite that fact, he spent the whole prior evening skating with me. I still was insecure about Roy's feelings. I thought all it would take was for him to see Amy or Val up close in the daylight. Once he became acquainted with their darling personalities, he'd probably fall madly in love with one of them or both. As luck would have it, Mom hollered out the window for me to come inside to finish my work. That was the excuse she used, but I knew her real intent was to get me away from the handsome stranger in our yard. A few days later, I about died of surprise when Royce called. He called me again the same day and didn't stop calling. In our long conversations, he claimed he couldn't keep his eyes off me and he loved my vivacious personality and laugh. "And no, I didn't want to go out with Valerie or Amy," he explained. "I wanted and still want to go out with you. You're the one I'm crazy about." These feelings really strong. Let me not act like when I was young and you have a little puppy crush that I didn't feel like that. Okay, yeah, I'm being judgmental. I'm reeling it back. All day long, and when I went to bed, my heart rejoiced. Never had I expected someone so handsome and kind to be attracted to me, and I certainly never seen myself as having a cute, fun personality. Each day that summer, I had another chance to talk to, listen to, and laugh with someone who really cared. At the next group stomp, Royce showed up with a few of his brothers and his friend Mark. Between dances, Valerie, Amy, and I hung out with these good looking guys near the back of the dance hall. Behind their backs, we goaded the passel of the all right men who hung close by to scrutinize these wayward, independent, polygamous men. They felt it was their duty to make sure they wouldn't get out of line with any of our young girls. The more I hung out with Royce at our house or his, chaperoned by my brothers who were dating his sisters, the more dad and mom began to fret. If I fell in love with an independent polygamist, they worried he might convince me to leave the all red group and my family. On the other hand, they thought my brothers who held their priesthoods would be able to convert their independent girlfriends to become part of the group. Though Dad was quite concerned, he didn't forbid me to see Roy or my sisters Amy to see his brother. He didn't want his children to treat anyone badly, nor should he totally disregard the possibility that with our kindness and good examples, some of these young men who don't know any better might accept the truth. There is a prophet of God still on this earth. With that heroic possibility, Amy, Val, and I were thrilled to be hanging out with new, unrelated male blood. Not much later, the three of us became known in the group as those rebellious girls. We were the naughty ones who opposed the general rules. We left the dance hall premises, flirted, and hung out with the male volants, with the malevolent, Malevolent, young men who were just hanging around to steal us young girls away from the group. In October, my brothers took me to a Halloween party held at Mark's mother's new home in Salt Lake City. I just met Mark at his recent skating rink party and the dance, so we found ourselves visiting in the basement family room for quite a while. Mark told me the pretty blonde who was swirling around the skating rink with Royce was his little sister Anne. She was the girl who had lived behind my Aunt Beth's house a few years earlier. Mark said he remembered my hair was fixed up in pigtails and how terrified I was of all of his brothers who were hanging out in front of the room. Do you remember when you came over with my sister Anne? Oh, that's that guy. I thought something was going to happen because she was scared when she walked in. Okay, I'm back. I'm the guy who teased you about using my games. Then Mark chuckled. I knew the minute I saw you, you'd be my wife someday. I blushed, turned away from more of his teasing, and went back upstairs to join the costume party. About 1 month after the Halloween party, our new crowd of friends planned a big harvest party to be held in our 3-car garage church. It's really another excuse, Royce said, winking at me, for us to be able to spend more time together. We have to create as many social gatherings as we can so you and I can see each other more. I didn't tell Royce how frustrated I was when he went slowly around the grocery store, choosing a bunch of junk food for the party. He had to stop at his sister's house, then the gas station. All I was eager for was the party. We had the food, but we were already late. Oh, don't worry, Royce told me when he sensed my annoyance. The party will go on for hours. Besides, this way, I have an excuse to keep you all to myself. By the time we got back home, our garage was nearly full of our young friends and relatives, blasting country western music way too loudly for my sensitive ears. After Royce and I placed the food and the drinks on the table, the music was turned off and everyone stopped talking. It must have been time for the blessing on the food, I thought. I felt like a ditz when everyone yelled, "Surprise!" I had no idea who the party was for. To cover my embarrassment, I continued to arrange the food, snacks, plates, and cups on the table. A few minutes later, a whole bunch of people gathered around the table and screamed, "Happy birthday, Sophia." I looked questionably at Royce, who was standing right next to me. "Happy 13th, beautiful girl." He said as he hugged me, "This party is for you. Sorry it was a few weeks late, but we didn't want you to get suspicious." I remembered one simple birthday cake and a song from me when I was 9, as well as the morning birthday song and goodies from my Aunt Amelia's family the previous year. But I never imagined anyone would ever care enough to arrange a big party for me. Yeah, Royce came in hot and heavy. He knew exactly what he was doing. Wow. She's too young. I'm sorry. I got to call it out. She's too young. 13 and 18 do not need to be together. Maybe if it's a different age gap, when we're talking about like a 25-year-old, maybe we can revisit this. But 13 and 18, it's a no for me. I was so overwhelmed, my legs went out from under me and I began to cry. Roy sat next to me on the floor. Oh, she literally was on the floor. He gathered me in his arms and held me until I could contain myself and join in my own party. Royce came to our house on a regular basis to see me. We went all over the place with my brothers, other couples, and with large and small groups of friends. We spent time together at the All Red meetings and Royce's house for Sunday school, sleigh riding, horseback riding, and hay rides. Our favorite times were the dances and the roller skating parties, where we had an excuse to touch and hug each other. We hung out together every chance we could. Between the times we saw each other, I missed him. He treated me royally and helped bolster my developing self-esteem. I knew he was meant to be a part of my life. Roy said he wanted to marry me when I was old enough, and he promised to wait for me to make the right decision. As time went on, I also began to hang out with Mark, my brother Alan, who had become good friend with Mark and my brother Alan, who had become good friends. The three of us became nearly inseparable. More than anything, we loved our long walks. We walked, run, and raced from Dad's house through the subdivision where Mark used to live and over to Willier Farm where Mark kept his horse. We discussed our hopes, dreams, likes, dislikes, friends, families, and heartaches for years on end. Mark told us of his sorrows when he and his 8 siblings lost their mother due to heart failure when he was only 12 years old. Mark and I mullied over my relationship with Royce and Mark's relationship with my friend Valerie, with whom he had been going with for quite some time. As much as we cared for our current sweethearts, neither of us believed we were destined to marry them. Royce and I continuously debated the differences in our beliefs. As dear as he was to me, I felt he and his father were the epitome of chauvinism. Chauvinism. And I knew from the onset of our falling for each other, I shouldn't marry him. What? It baffled me. The only spiritual guidance I received when it came to my covenant mate was I should not marry the guy I loved. As with most teens, my next few years were packed with wonderful moments as well as craziness and heartaches. Royce and I would break up, get back together, hurt each other, disagree, and then start all over again. After all, she's only 13. At Wheeler Farm, in one of our favorite spots, Mark carved a big heart on a wide, mature tree that had fallen over a creek bed. When his masterpiece was completed, it said, "Sophia and Mark forever." Then under a huge oak tree, he pulled me close and told me he loved me. "I know the two of us will get married someday," he said. "I've known ever since I first saw that scared little tow-headed blonde flowing behind my sister. I've been waiting for the right time to tell you this. I love you too, Mark," I told him sadly, "but I don't think we should marry each other. We're best friends. Someday soon you will know it's meant to be, Sophia. Until then, I'll wait for you." Okay, I was real confused by the Mark comment, but now we see, okay. A few weeks later, on a chilly day at the farm, Mark slid across the car seat and kissed me tenderly on my lips. I'd never felt that feeling before. Finally, I realized what kissing meant to others. No wonder my brothers and their girlfriends smooched me so much. smooch so much. Royce's many attempts to kiss me with his tongue wallowing around in my mouth were nothing but repulsive to me. I began to wonder if the good tickly feeling all over my body was God's message to me. Was that the sensation, the burning in my bosom? Did it mean Mark was my covenant mate? He was certainly sure he was. The minor headaches I'd been having nearly every day since I'd fallen upon my head when I was younger got worse and worse. My supposed split personality was back in full force. Back and forth, over and over again, I changed my mind. My soul knew I shouldn't marry Royce, yet I missed being with him and got terribly jealous when he dated other girls. During all the turbulence, both Mark and Royce often made sure I found out when they dated other girls so I could feel as hurt and jealous as they did. Okay, she was, oh. The guy said I was a heartbreaker because I led them on and then dumped them. Still, I despise myself for not knowing how to control my unreliable emotions. That's because you were doing all this when you were so young, and that's a lot to ask of a teenager. It appeared I never loved a man enough to marry him, and I was absolutely sure no man would ever love me enough to stick with me forever. The problem with that was I wanted children. The wild child in me often daydreamed of running away to California. I would live with the hippies I saw and heard about on television. They dressed really cool and looked so happy and in love with life and each other. Besides all of that, I was opposed to killing, and they enthusiastically objected to the Vietnam War that was drafting relatives and brothers into combat. At my age, Ashbury community's idea of free love sounded perfect to me. In the big state of California, I could choose an intellectual, good-looking man to father my baby. Then we could go our separate ways and to live happily ever after. And that is the end of chapter 14. I feel like a lot of her turmoil is things that, had they not beat marriage and procreation and other things into them, I don't think it would be something that she was so concerned about. But because that is what they taught, and they told them about, all these different things that are associated with your testimony or spiritual witness, whatever it is that they call it, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. As a result, she was pressuring herself with things that, to me, at 12 and 13, she shouldn't have even been worried about. Not at 16, not at 18. I feel like she had plenty of time on her side. But that is the end of those two chapters. Thanks so much for joining me. Until next time.